Hey everybody, I'm Matt Crump from Hope Revealed and God's Got This. So excited to be with you today on such a beautiful Saturday afternoon. And I am in Georgia today, and we're gonna have a fantastic time with my buddy right here in just a moment. Yeah, you can't see him now, he'll be here shortly. His name is Josh Oxendine. We're in his backyard and gonna talk to you about something very incredible that he has that is reaching hearts across the world. And it is well, I'd say ministry for sure, but definitely a movement that can help inspire people to understand how you can do things that you thought were impossible. There are some incredible stories. His ministry, the brand is called Hear My Story. So in just a moment, we'll be sitting here with Josh. Thanks so much for being here today. Welcome to Hope Revealed. Hey everybody, we're back. Thanks so much for being with us today. I told you he'd be here, right? He wasn't there before, but there he is. Like, it's magic. This is my buddy Josh. Say hey to everybody, Josh.
What's going on? How are you?
Hey man, it's really exciting to be able to get to understand some of what Josh is doing and his story and his ministry. And there's so many things we can go into today. It would take too long, too many episodes. Maybe we'll do a few more episodes. But Josh has been through some pretty interesting things in his life. He's also gotten to a point now where he has as I mentioned before, an incredible ministry movement that is sharing stories of how people overcome so many obstacles in their lives that we've talked about with Hope Revealed, right? And God's Got This moments. Incredible at Hear My Story. So we'll talk about that a bit. But Josh, I just want to kind of start off a little bit on the front side here. A lot of times with God's Got This, Hope Revealed, we really try to dig into some of those moments where you had a God's got this moment. I know personally you've been through things like the flood at your house, right? Having to start all over again, relocate, trying to find another job. I mean, there's been some crazy moments you've had in your life. But if you can think right now, because this is an off-the-cuff question, we didn't talk about this. If there's one thing that stands out to you particularly, one of those moments where you're like, man, I really knew that God had this, and this was a God's got this moment where it was a horrible situation, but on the flip side of it, I really saw what he was trying to do. Do you have one of those things that stands out to you right now?
Honestly, I think it was the only situation that I can think of was through tragedy, through grief. I grew up in a broken home, and as I grew up in a broken home, I quickly realized that at some point, after bouncing back and forth between my mom and my dad and the hardships and the things that happened through that, I quickly realized that that man was going to fail me in general. Like, my parents were going to fail me. I think for the longest time I had a harvest held in this anger and this just feeling upset at my parents. And
were you a Christian at this time at all?
I was. This is like, my parents separated when I was 9. So from 9 to 13, man, I just had this gap in space in my life, and I didn't know what to do. And every single guy that my mom would date, I would just cling on to that guy, but then that guy would seem to fail. And fast forward a little bit, is I ended up coming to Atlanta, and I ended up after bouncing back and forth between my mom and my dad, I just got tired of doing that, and I had the opportunity to come live with my aunt and uncle in the Atlanta area who they weren't able to have kids. And so one day I was reading the Bible, and came across a verse, Psalms 27:10. It says, "When my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will take me up." And so it was like this enlightened moment where I knew who God was at that point, but it was like I saw God in a whole nother way. I saw him as Abba, I saw him as Daddy, which is what I had been searching for prior to.
Right.
But I think what I realized within that verse, what that verse says is, when my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will take me up. If you could really dig down to just the basis of it, is that man in general is going to fail you, and whether intentional or unintentional. And fast forward a few years after that, I ended up losing my grandmother, and my grandmother was one of the most influential women in my life, and it was one of the hardest things I had to walk through. But in the midst of the pain, in the midst of the hurt, I quickly just sort of went back to that verse. And although sort of speaking directly to mom and dad, or when your mother and father, again, just man's gonna fail you,
Right.
intentionally or unintentionally. Intentionally being, through divorce, through different things like that, or unintentionally being death. Everybody dies. Man in general is always gonna fail you. And so for me, it was in that moment I realized, I didn't say God's got this, but I think having walked through that with my mom
Right.
and my dad, I think I knew how to fill that gap and that love and that emptiness there's the huge void that was left in my life. And so I think just in that it could have been a lot more difficult, and it could have been a lot harder, but I realized that God was going to carry me through it all.
And this was when that was 9 to 13 years old, and then when you were with your aunt and uncle, how old were you then?
So it was 9 to 13. When I moved to Atlanta, I was 13. My grandmother died my freshman year in college, so it's probably maybe 5-6 years later after that.
That's pretty amazing. So to have to learn all those things really at a young age, but it really helped develop some core beliefs, I would assume, in your life at that point.
For sure.
Pretty solid there. Well, fast forward, I mean, you've got an awesome family now, a beautiful wife, kids. Tell me a little bit about your family.
I'm just sitting here thinking, man, we are both in black shirts, and
It's hot
the sun is
outside,
there
y'all.
now.
This is, I told you, hot, beautiful day. It's hot.
It is hot. Hot Atlanta is what they say.
It is.
No, I am married to an incredible woman named Brooke, and we have 5 girls.
5 girls.
Yeah, dude, I often say I'm a minority in a sorority. Team estrogen, dude.
Yes.
Anytime anybody wants to give towards a wedding fund or
You got it. Talk about God's got
college
this.
fund, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Team estrogen, but it's fun. We have, like I said, 5 girls, and 13, 10, 9, almost 3, and then an 8-month-old. And never a dull moment, tiring, but I've learned so much about myself. Being a husband is incredible, and being a dad is one of the most incredible things. I think in being a husband and being a dad, I'm not trying to over spiritualize it, but I've learned so much more about the image of God and God's relationship with us than
Yeah, and I would have to think the combination from your Psalms 27:10, your life as a kid, understanding that man will fail you, and your foundation was understanding Daddy, God. Does that play in a lot to how you are as a father?
For sure, and it's actually really unique. So we have a blended family. So my wife, 3 of my daughters are stepdaughters, and it's actually just a beautiful full picture of the redemptive power of the gospel. To be this boy who was broken at one point to now being able to be
He trusts
a
you with
daddy.
5 kids.
Well, yeah,
5
to
girls.
be a daddy to girls who, and so there's so many conversations where I'm like, girls, I know what you're feeling. I know the things that you're feeling and the emotions that you're having. And so just a beautiful, just full circle, of how God can work through the gospel in particularly just my life, for sure.
Oh, that's awesome, man. And I know that, stories are important to you. You just shared one with us. And that really has a lot to do with what you're doing now with your brand and ministry called Hear My Story.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So for the longest time, I short just a short abbreviated version of my story. But 7-8 years ago, I used to just travel around and do the itinerant thing and share my story. And the more stories that the more times that I would share my story, I quickly realized that I could relate to a lot of people, but I couldn't relate to a lot of people. I couldn't relate to the person who has cancer, or I couldn't relate to the person who grew up in the ghetto, just so many different avenues. And I actually met this young man after speaking once, and he had just lost his sight. And I'm not this cliche like Christian dude where I'm just I'll pray for you, God. Everything's gonna be all right, right? Well, I did pray for him. I didn't have any relational credibility to stand on to speak into his life. I encouraged him and I prayed to him, but I remember leaving feeling like, I don't know what I really did for this guy. And the unique part is later that weekend I went to a college retreat and I met this kid named Will, or a college student named Will, and he had been blind since he was 5. And in my mind, I'm like, if I could connect Will with the kid I'd met earlier, and it bridged and morphed this idea of just connecting people. While I can't relate to a lot of people, I can network or try to be the conduit in connecting people with different stories.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I was speaking so much, but fast forward, but about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we started this organization called Hear My Story, and it started out with that idea of connecting people with similar stories, who've walked through similar hardships, to be able to speak encouragement, to taking the person who's overcome cancer to the person who's on the front end of it, to be able to even speak, even if it's not necessarily just about God, but be able to speak about, hey, I know what it's like to have chemo pumped through your, and just being able to speak hope and encouragement into someone else's life.
Right.
And so that's how it started out, but it's gradually, we've been building the plane as we fly, and it's beginning to grow. And so it's not just for the here and now. We begin to sort of realize that in some of sharing the stories, or people sharing the stories, the storytellers, as we'll say, oftentimes they're still in the messy. And so we've now begun to build out different things to say, hey, how can we not only help the hearer, but how can we help the storyteller? How can we help the person in the middle of some of this? And so we were still fleshing some of that out, but it's just more about helping, trying to provide some type of like mental health resources, life coaching, counseling, those type of things. So
right.
That's about what we do, man. We're just a digital storytelling platform, trying to really just connect people and help them continue to tell their story and provide resources.
What's some of the ways that you can network through it? Is like through the website? Do you have an interactive thing there, or is it a group thing they can do, or just watch videos? How's that work?
So there's mostly everything that we do is we live in a day and age where this is probably going to get loaded on a website and on social media and different outlets. And so for us, we use just the social media platforms. And so we will come in and we will record a story that's either, through somehow of networking, or maybe someone will request online to share their story, and we'll flesh some of that out. And but then we'll eventually edit and upload that video onto our website, onto all of our social media platforms, and then from there, our website is www.hearmystory.co. Not .com. .com was about $17,000.
Not worth it.
So we went with .co, and then Facebook is there, Instagram, YouTube. That's where all of our stories are at. From there, if you want to connect to the person outside of just commenting, we're able to sort of make that happen.
That's like to the links, like on the video itself.
Yeah, you can just if you go to the website, you just say, it says connect with this person, and we're able to click that button.
That's awesome. So even for those people that are, you're sharing stories of people that are just regular folks, and then you've got some folks in Hear My Story that are actually out there in the circuit. They're speaking, or I know another guy he's a writer. He's traveling. He's written a book, right? So there's opportunities for people that you're interviewing and talking to actually express their ministry, their heart, right? And so you actually act as a conduit for them to actually, let people hear about what they're doing, so they can actually get more things out there, right?
Yep.
That's pretty fantastic. So you've done a lot of shows, a lot of interviews, I think probably around 30 or so, if I recall.
Double.
Oh, a lot. And he's got some you haven't even finished editing yet, right?
We've recorded, and I just got our metrics last week, and we recorded 65 stories within our last fiscal year.
He's in Georgia right here, but you don't just record stuff in Georgia.
No, so we started out in Atlanta, and then we've launched two
satellite.
We've launched two what we call storytelling hubs. One of which I'm not going to share because I haven't publicly announced.
It's top secret.
It's top secret.
I know what it is. It is.
So Atlanta, New York, and then we had a target city of Seattle, but we're sort of
too
back
much
to
rain
normal
there,
right
y'all.
now.
It's always raining.
It's just all the way on the west
Rain,
coast.
yeah.
But our 5-year, 10-year goal, or actually our 10-year goal is to be in every major city having a storytelling hub. And what we mentioned by storytelling hub is we truly believe that everybody has a story, and so we want to try to give people a platform to do that. And so obviously being in one location is not the most efficient way to do that. And so having a hub to where people can then go and try to record their stories. And so we'll have videographers and volunteer or paid or whatever, and then we'll have life coaches or counselors to be able to assist, and then someone coordinating stuff. So, but just the hub, it's really just a way of trying to provide those resources, storytelling resources.
Yeah, it's
to people
fantastic.
who want to share their story.
I know myself, just through editing, video work that I do, the amount of time it takes for me to do everything I'm doing, and it consumes a lot of time and effort. I mean, you can't just do a little show like this and then upload it. I mean, there's a lot of work that does in between. So there's a lot of work you have doing, and I know that you're blessed now because you're not just doing this all by yourself anymore. You have some folks that are helping out with, like, what, camera work and some video stuff, and
I'm not very good at stuff, and so
we'll clarify that on the next show.
No. I've really tried.
Let me go get his wife. We'll be right back.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think I read a book several years ago called Strength Finders, and it says to manage your weaknesses and master your strengths. And I know what my giftings are, and I know what the things aren't. So try to surround myself with people that complement my weaknesses. And so I've done things out of necessity and edited stuff and done whatever, but
here comes your ride, bro.
Yeah. But in actuality, we've been blessed to be able to. They just keep it going, though. They don't turn it off, do they?
Bye.
What are they doing? I mean, can't they turn it off?
I know. It's like
We got different volumes.
We understand. There should be a volume, like, as you get closer. It should get
I
louder.
think it's going farther away, but it's gotten louder.
I think they may have turned around.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
All right, there it's gone.
Yeah, so I've realized, man, that I'm not good at everything, right? And that I need to surround myself with people that complement my weaknesses. And so essentially that's what we've done. We've been blessed to be able to sort of begin to build people out. And initially I wore a lot of hats, and I'm sure you probably do now. Actually, I know you do, seeing the work ethic that you have. But to me, I'm able to concentrate on bigger stuff like vision, fundraising, and those type of things, and
which is a blessing.
And allow sort of other people to be able to sort of take those things that are actually really gifted, and that's their passion in those. So yeah, dude, we've been blessed to be able to begin to gradually build a team out, and actually this next year we're almost doubling the amount of people that we have now on our board, on our team, and so I'm excited.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, man, you've had a lot of stories to think about. Of the stories that you have right now that are edited and out there, maybe even ones that aren't edited, is there a story that kind of sticks out to your mind right away that really hits you? That I know they're all powerful, so I'm not going to discredit anything, but is there a moment during one of these things you have that really stuck with you?
I mean, there are several stories. There's two stories.
Are these ones they can go find?
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's two stories. One by the name of Jarvis Davis is a guy that I actually met, and insanely powerful story. I want to share it, but then it takes away from
They're clicking on it, watching it.
them actually clicking it, because it is one of those stories like, are you kidding me? That's what happened.
Wow.
So I'll just go watch that story. It might be one of the most powerful stories. It's one of those stories that people hear. I mean, I want to say that people like the mayor of Atlanta heard, Shaquille O'Neal heard, and like then begin to pull him in and begin to sort of offer different storytelling platforms for him, or different platforms for him to share his story. It's that powerful. So that one, and then there was, man, I don't know why it stuck with me this long, but there is a story of a girl. So we last fall we went and recorded at a student retreat in San Antonio, and we captured the story of this girl. Her name was Rebecca Taylor, and I don't know if it was the amount of stories that we recorded in the day, but we were sort of late in the day when we were recording her story, and she walked in and she shared a little bit of what she was walking through, and so I don't know if I was overwhelmed with emotion because of all the stories recorded that day, or if it was her story that just captured me.
Mm-hmm.
But that is 65 stories that we recorded, like pretty cool, calm, and collective. But I broke down.
Wow.
And her story is insanely powerful. She has I think pancreatitis or something had to do with her pancreas, and she's been in the hospital more days than she's been alive, or over half her life. That's how she describes it. And so she was, and she's young. She's like 15. One of the most respectful and humble and well-spoken young ladies I've ever met. And she, so Make-A-Wish came to her and said, "Hey, what do you want to do with your wish?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, she doesn't know when she's gonna die, and because of this disease, it's crippled her immune system. So she's like, it's an ongoing thing. She gets sick and then goes back in the hospital and spends. I think she just recently went back in the hospital. But anyway, so Make-A-Wish came to her and said, "Hey, what can we do for you?" And she's like, "Well, you know, the ideal thing is I want to go meet Mickey, or I want to go to meet Tim Tebow, or whoever, some famous person. That's what they're good at." And she said, "I want you to find me a donor to give towards trying to find a cure for this disease." And they started a nonprofit for her. Make-A-Wish started a nonprofit. It's called Rebecca's Wish.
Wow.
And so through that, this organization, her nonprofit, her wish was to help other people.
Yeah.
And so she then now has taken this, and they've raised, I mean, I think just recently they did something with San Antonio Zoo, and they raised like $300,000 or something.
Amazing.
Towards helping other kids who have the same disease, help with hospital costs, help with travel costs, help with different things in research, and so she's just living out a legacy on Earth, like right now. So
and she's 15.
Yeah,
or
15 to 16 years old, and it is one of those things where I've been, I was really touched by it. So I don't know if it's the most powerful. You can listen to a bunch of them. Like I said, there's probably maybe 30 up there, 30 published and edited out there. But and there's a ton of them that are really powerful and that can move you. But hers, I don't know why, it hit me hard.
Yeah. That's amazing, and there's so many stories, like he said, that you can find there at hearmystory.co, not .com, hearmystory.co, that may be a moment like that for you. You could spend a couple of days probably going through those stories and find some inspiration for something. I mean, sometimes the issue is we have problems or anxieties or concerns or cares or whatever, and it's hard to express what you mean, I think, sometimes to people, or you're afraid to say it. And on this platform, Josh has provided opportunity for people to express those moments, those thoughts, and ways to understand how to get through things. And you know, on a personal side, Josh, I know you've gone through a lot of things. You talked about your childhood, and I know you in ministry, you've had some things where you've had to search and evaluate in your own life, in your call to minister to people, whether it be a pastor at a church or doing what you're doing, and I know that you were in the midst of a time there, and I'm just thinking about some pastors that might be watching today or thinking about their call. I've wrestled with it myself, and you know, you have come to a unique situation. How did some of that happen for you as you were seeking your call? You know, you were looking at, you know, maybe starting a church somewhere, to where you're at now. Here you're out leading out a movement that is telling stories all around the world, and this is one of the things that was important to you since you've been a kid. How did that happen?
I don't know, man. I think
that's it, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for being here today.
It's one of those things. I've had a lot of close pastor buddies of mine sort of say, like, dude, like, honestly, I want to say this, the first 5 years of ministry were really tough for me, really hard for me. I mean, I remember one year I did my taxes, and I lived off of $7,000, right? Of course, I think I lived on a church parsonage or something like that. But like, I was single at the time, and maybe I could do that.
Ramen, huh?
Yeah, it was. But you know, and then I look at the back half of my ministry, and financially, like the Lord just provided and put people in my life. And so I've had pastor buddies of mine be like, man, like there's something that God has his hand on your life, and put the people. And so I don't think I could take any credit for it, man, to be honest with you. I don't think it's anything that I've done. I don't think it's any decisions that I've made that have been correct. Oftentimes I think I make the wrong decisions, and God still directs my steps. And so there's I think it's a proverb, man chooses his way, but the Lord directs his steps. And
Right.
So I think it's one of those things to where, man, you're right. I've been in ministry. I've been a lead pastor. I've planted a church, and it's all even brought me to where I'm doing now. And honestly, a culmination of I've shared my story for the last 15 years, and now I'm helping people tell theirs. And so, honestly, the season of life that I'm in, I'm probably most passionate about this than anything that I've ever done. I enjoy it. I really do, helping people tell their stories. I'm still able to minister. I'm still able to speak into people's life. It's just something that I really, really enjoy. But there's things that I run into now where I'm like, I don't know what the next step is. And so if there's a pastor out there that I could encourage you in some way, it would be a quote by the guy named his name is Wayne Cordero, pastor in Hawaii. And he says, there's a few things in life that there's tons of things in life that you're capable of. There's only a few things in life that you're called to, and to live into those moments, to the things that you're called to, not things you're capable of. You're capable of doing a lot of stuff, and I think that, ultimately it just comes down to, what has God called you? What has God wired you to do? Because then it just feels natural. It feels like that's you. And so, don't try to make your 2s and 3s 10s. Make your 7s and 8s 10s. Sort of go back to the master your strengths and manage your weaknesses, right? 2s and 3s, that's just, you can do that stuff,
right.
But you're specifically wired and specifically called to do one thing. Grow in that.
That's awesome. So lots of different facets here to Josh, and I've got thoughts of things that we could talk about to go into even more, but we're just going to pause there. There's so many things that you could probably read between the lines on, and if there's questions that may have popped up in your mind as you've been listening to what Josh has said, you can easily reach out to him. You can find him at his website, hearmystory.co, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk with you about some of those things. And I've just been happy to watch what the Lord has been doing in his life. Some of it has been like, man, that's incredible. And some of it's been, man, what the heck, Like there's just been some moments that Josh has been through that have been pretty amazing. And to be able to see, look where we're sitting at right now. We're in this beautiful backyard in Georgia on this home that God provided for you. It's gorgeous, and you're in a great spot to relax and hear from the Lord, and for your kids to grow up and have an awesome life, and for you to be a dad.
There's no
and a husband.
relaxing with 5 kids.
Well, that's true.
Never.
This is all a lie, folks. What we really want to say is get out while you can, escape, leave, do whatever you can. No, it's been phenomenal to watch it. And again, if you'd like to be a part of that, and if you may even have a story of your own, maybe you have been wrestling with telling your story. You might have a question, and you might say, well, Josh, Matt, I do, but I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to talk about that. I don't know how to put that in words. Bam, here's a guy right here. All you have to do is contact him. He can walk you through it. It's simple. The big thing is that there is a story inside of you. And unless you tell it, it doesn't make an impact, right? So what's a way you could think in the last thought here for somebody to be able to get that story out?
I think that oftentimes there's tons of things that go into reasons why people don't share their story. They might know that they have a story, or they're fearful of, they don't know how to get it out. I think for me, it was realizing that there was another me out there. And I think I realized that once I sat in a coffee shop with a kid who grew up in a broken home, and in this I'm like, man, I didn't realize this, and it was almost therapy. I think there's therapy in sharing. I think that there's oftentimes even, I wouldn't say it brings, it doesn't make things easier. Oftentimes it brings meaning to what you walk through.
Yeah.
And so if you're out there and you want to share your story and you're just fearful of it, man, sharing your story, it's a vulnerable thing to do. It's putting yourself out there. But man, we try really hard to provide a safe place to do that. And then I think again what it does is it oftentimes we see that there's therapy in it where people just, it's like man, this has been on my shoulder for forever, and so they're able to share it, and then from that people then are encouraged and speak back, and there's just an incredible amount of hope that it brings back to the storyteller, to the person sharing. So if that's you, I think there's so many reasons why to share it for the person hearing, but there's just as many reasons to share your story for you, to receive encouragement and hope from that. So
there you go. That's the whole premise right there, and that's what this whole show is about. Is about a hope revealed, and that's really what Josh was just talking about. So we just want to encourage you and remember that whatever you do, whatever circumstance, whatever situation, no matter what you're going through, don't ever forget God's got this.
This world is lost and dying.